defect in the ignition switches as far back as 2001, 13 years before the recall, correct? Yes or no will work.
The investigation will tell us that.
You don't know when GM knew about the defect?
I would
Take a look at tab 7 in your notebook, Ms. Barra. This is a GM document. And what this GM document talks about is this switch. It says, tear down evaluation on the switch revealed 2 causes of failure: low contact force and low detent plunger force. Do you recognize that document, ma'am?
This is the first I've seen this document.
Okay. Well, so you don't know how long GM knew about this,
And that's
right?
why I'm doing an investigation.
Okay. In fact, Delphi, the manufacturer of the ignition switch, informed GM in 2002 that the switch was supposed to be 15 minimum torque specification, but in fact these switches were between 4 and 10, didn't it?
The specification is correct that it was supposed to be 20 plus or minus 5.
And these switches were between 4 and 10, correct? Yes or no will work.
We know that now.
And GM was notified by Delphi of this, correct? Yes or no?
I am not aware of being notified.
Okay.
Can I also correct? I was not aware of
I need a
specific
yes or no. I
case.
only have 5 minutes. I'm sorry. So as far back as 2004, 10 years ago, GM conducted a problem resolution tracking system inquiry after it learned of an incident where the key moved out of the run condition in a 2005 Chevrolet Cobalt. Is this correct?
Again, you're relating specific incidents that happened.
You don't know?
In our entire investigation.
You don't know about that? Take a look at tab 8, please. Yeah. And by the way, ma'am, I'm getting this information from the chronology that GM provided to NHTSA.
Right.
So let me ask you, again, as far back as 2004, GM conducted a problem resolution tracking system inquiry after it learned of an incident where the key moved out of the run condition. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, after the PRTS inquiry, one engineer advised against further action because there was, quote, no acceptable business case to provide a resolution, and the PRTS was closed. Is that correct?
If that is true, that is a very disturbing fact.
Yes,
that
it
is not
is.
the way we make decisions.
Okay. Again in 2005, GM received more reports of engines stopping when the keys were jerked out of the run condition. Further investigations were conducted, and engineers proposed changes to the keys. Is that correct?
It's part of our investigation to get that complete timeline.
Okay. Well, much of
actually
this
what
I'm taking
happened,
from the timeline GM has already done.
which was a summary.
Okay. So as a result of the investigation, a technical service bulletin was issued to dealers that if car owners complain, they should be warned of this risk and advised to take unessential items from the keychain. But this recommendation was not made to the public. No public statements were issued, no recalls sent. Is that correct?
To my understanding, yes.
Thank you. In 2006, GM contracted with Delphi to redesign the ignition switch to use a new detent plunger and spring that would increase torque force in the switch. Is that correct?
Yes.
And for some reason, though, the new switch was not given a part number and instead shared a number with the original defective switch. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, this new switch also did not meet GM's minimum torque specifications either. This one, Delphi said, was in the range of 10 to 15, and it really should have been 15 at a minimum. Is that correct?
I have not seen the test results from that.
You don't know that. Okay. Now, despite these facts, GM continued to manufacture cars with these same ignition switches for the model years 2008 to 2011. Is that correct?
Yes.
And between 2004 and 2014, no public notices were issued as a result of GM's knowledge of these facts, and no recalls were issued for the over 2.5 million vehicles manufactured with these defective ignition switches. Is that correct?
Yes.
And finally, 3 recalls were made this year, 2014, 2 in February, and 1 just last Friday. Is that right?
Related to this ignition switch?
Now, I have just a couple more questions. The first question I have, Ms. Barra, GM is intending to replace all the switches for those cars beginning on April 7th. Is that right?
We will begin shipping material or new parts.
Now, are
next
you
week.
going to put a completely redesigned switch, or are you going to put the old switches from 2006 into those cars?
It's going to be a switch that meets the.
Is it going to be a newly redesigned switch, or is it going to be the old switch from 2006?
It's the old design that meets the performance that's required to
Okay, I
operate
have more
safely.
questions, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps we can do another round. Thank you.
But an important part, a follow-up, several members